Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Code Remix Weekly. With you here are our regular hosts, and my name is Tim Twick, and with me is Sam Schneider.
Hello, welcome.
I keep, whenever that music comes on, it's nice and happy and friendly. I always like it.
It helps get the energy up.
And it is, of course, in reference to our Code Remix Summit that we will have in Miami next May. So if you want to have some of those vibes and maybe some of that warm summer feeling, then be sure to get your tickets for the conference that we're hosting. As always, we have like a VIP code that you can use to get $300 off. And I can tell you this afternoon when I was cycling through like wet snow here in the Netherlands, I kind of really wanted to look forward to Miami. So
yeah, it'll be nice.
So yeah, be sure to check that out. But as always, we're going to look at some of the things new in this past week with Open Rewrite and Modern. And then we're going to do a deeper dive on the topic of maintaining configuration as code and some of the tools that we have and recipes to make that easy for you. So first up, what's new is that we have a new podcast out in collaboration with the folks at Stack Overflow. So if you want to hear about how Open Rewrite got started, how we are an open source based company, and how we are helping maintain software, then be sure to check it out. It's really neat. And it's Jonathan on the show there for, I think, 27 minutes, if I see correctly. And then we're going to some parts of how we view and use AI to do the same. So be sure to check that out. And it's also in LinkedIn if that's a format you prefer, and then you can see just kind of short snippets from the show there. So be sure to check it out. Should be good.
Yeah, Jonathan's a good speaker. It's a good time when he does a podcast.
Yeah, it's always entertaining. So all good. Now, another thing new, like last week we announced the release, but we were right in the middle of the release. So we didn't yet have the release notes. We didn't have an overview of everything that's new. So now finally you can go to the docs and see the changelog of everything that is new. And we have quite a few new recipes here. So if you look for recipes, I think we have 53 new recipes in this edition. And that's just rounding up the work that was done over the past 2 to 3 weeks for this particular release. And then, as always, we also do an announcement on Axe, or in this case, Blue Sky as well, where you get a very short overview of things that are new in this particular release. So if you can see that we added that support for those type references and some preliminary Lombok support. So if you enable a property, you get a parser that knows some of those Lombok methods that are syntactically generated. And then aside from that, there's also some of the recipes that we will highlight. So the Hibernate 6.4 and 6.5 migration recipes are there, as well as those for Jodo time and to annotate nullable methods. It's a very brief summary of what you can read in full detail on our release notes and in the docs. So be sure to subscribe either to the docs or to the feed here that we have. I think we're working on a Blue Sky account for Open Rewrite. So it's just not, it's going to have to be me to follow, but know that is coming out there.
Wait, it's going to have to be you because no one else is gonna create it?
No, I think we're planning to create it like centrally, but until then you can follow me. But I hope in the next week or so we will have something Open Rewrite themed related to follow. But until then.
But for now, Tim is Open Rewrite.
It's like I don't know. I don't mind to embody Open Rewrite on Blue Sky while I'm there. I've been interacting with folks on the topic of Open Rewrite today on Blue Sky. It's all fun to be there and just should be good. So then, if you, as always, if you want to get the aligned versions, use the rewrite recipe bomb. That's 2.22.0 that you want to be looking for. And this also lists the compatible versions of the Maven and Gradle plugins that are out. So check that out. And then, because there's no time to waste, we also did a new patch release since last week. So if you want to get some of the improvements that we did on the type references, then be sure to check out this particular version. Of course, it's an API heavily in development still. It's so it's also tagged as undergoing changes. So this will.
Which API are you saying is in development, undergoing changes? This source file with references.
The source file with references. So today we worked on adding support for properties and YAML files there as well. We're able to do those replacements on the change types that you might reference in there.
That is effectively a follow-up on last week's topic, as we were discussing something very related to that. So if you were here last week and we were talking about extending or detecting references to types or Java classes and other data file formats, this is what that's about. So a little follow-up from last week.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a new latest version that you can try, and there's matching versions of the Gradle and Maven plugins. And they
Gradle
work
and
best.
Mavel. The two sisters, Gradle and Mavel. Sounds like
So you
something
can,
from an old like fairy tale, you know?
the Brothers Grimm will have written something.
Brothers
about
Grimm,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
They escaped from the evil witch ant in her ivy palace, perhaps. I think we could come up with a pretty good fable of Gradle and Mavel.
I think if you throw this into ChatGPT, you will get a pretty decent childhood story from it. But yeah, so we support both, and then with the new source file with references, next week you'll probably be able to do those replacements on properties files and YAML files as well. So it's really using the same API to do replacements any place that we find worthwhile to migrate as well. So that's that. Then one more thing, that if you want to join us in Miami as a speaker, we're quite quickly filling out the speaker slots that we have. If you go to the page, you can already see that we have some quite good names to add to our roster. But if you want to join that lineup, then you have until the January 12th to add your own submissions here. I've been talking to a couple of folks, helping them create a abstract to submit through this form. But yeah, as always, just be sure to get your own submissions in there as well. And if you get selected, you get to join us in Miami, and with hopefully some of that swinging music that we had at the start. And then lastly, I think I want to highlight is that we did a update to the marketplace on the Modern platform. So for the folks that use the platform to maybe discover recipes, run them on open source projects, if you now go to the marketplace, which is also the landing page for Modern, then you're able to browse these recipes more easily through these tiles. In the past, this was a long list of recipes, and you would have to scroll all the way down to get a quick glance. But now with these icons, it's going to be very easy to find the thing you're looking for. And of course, we have that smart search here as well, where if you want to find types, then you can find the recipe to find those types. So that's pretty good. So go to the app.modern.io if you want to see those improvements. And with that, I think we can move on to the main topic for this week, which is modernizing your configuration as code in its many, many various forms. So then, while Sam is working on showing you things with MergeYaml, I can already show you one example that I worked on in the past week of using these types of recipes to do maintenance on maybe your Kubernetes descriptors. For that, I'm going to present a different screen, and I'm going to show you my IDE in just a moment. And I will take you through the Rewrite Kubernetes project that we have. So let me zoom in just a bit. And what you will see here is that we have a set of recipes under the deprecated API migrations, which is something that in the past, when I was using Kubernetes, was always a bit of a pain. They'd come out with a new version, and you would then have to visit all your microservices, and within those, all your Kubernetes descriptors, and within those, all the key descriptors for each of the profiles that you might have, like test and staging and production, and then have to do these types of replacements, where you have an old API version, and then you have to replace that with the new API version. And then that repeats itself quite a bit because there's been a lot of these types of changes over the years. So what we did, of course, we have recipes. We're able to find things reliably in YAML files, and we're able to do these replacements. So that's what I've implemented based on the deprecation guide that they have published at the Kubernetes docs. Now, if I can very briefly show you that screen, and I need to share a different screen window. So this is that list. So this is what you used to have to go through manually to find each of these instances, like this was renamed, you should now be using this, and in addition you should use this new configuration option. It's very boring work that we would love to automate, and of course with recipes we now have a way to do so. But it's even it's described very repetitively. So the neat thing here is that if you start your custom recipe development with just a couple of examples, then beyond that we now have tools in our IDE that are very helpful at finding those repeated patterns and then applying them for you. So what I did was I used my IDE to get a start, where I developed that change API version recipe. Then I added the first two here, and then I added this.
Use your API to get a start. Or
IDE. So I developed this change API version recipe. Let's try to open it up. Well, you can see that it's just a recipe which has a couple options. And it changes that API version, it finds it, and then it calls the change property value recipe, an existing YAML recipe. And then beyond that, it was very easy to convince the helpful Copilot chat that we have in the sideline to copy paste the whole maintenance or the whole deprecation guide, and then it generated all the other ones that I needed to be doing here. So rather than giving this to some junior to work out or leave it to the open source community to figure out all the additional things that need to be migrated, we just have a helpful bot to write these recipes for us. So that's pretty neat.
That is cool. And does that use any GPTs or AI models in there anywhere? So
this, on my end, that uses Copilot. So there's a Copilot chat that you can use to do this kind of type of work. And then that was my first time working with Copilot chat. So I do use Copilot a lot, but the chat I never really saw a use case for, but until you think, well, maybe this is what it's really good at. And indeed, it's really helpful.
So you found it to be helpful for like iterating on something where you could say, make me a recipe list like this. I'm just kind of curious could you demonstrate how you got started doing this? Because I feel like in our audience, there are people who might want to do something similar. Be like, okay, I have some release notes here. How could I get started with making, a recipe from these release notes?
I'm not quite sure why I'm suddenly signed out, but we're going to try.
Let's hope that did you get banned from Copilot from asking it too many pointed questions?
I don't know. It's okay. Now we're up and running. So what I did, and let's remove the last ones. So we now have recipes up until API version 1.26. And what I did in the sidebar here is I want to generate more recipes for the and then first it will start to think a bit because I haven't given it the input yet. And now I'm going to go to the docs And then I'm going to copy paste the migration guide for the 1.25 release, or see how much I can fit into this this dialog. You'll notice that this part wasn't prepared, but we're going to see what comes out of it.
Hey, it's a live interactive demo. If an error comes out or something unexpected happens, that just shows how authentic the process is, not canned.
So what I copy pasted on the right hand side here is directly from the migration guide, and then you get the recipe in return that you actually want to insert. So here it has identified the batch v1 beta 1, the batch v needs to be v1, and discovery as well, and events. And this, once it's done, you can copy paste all of it and then add it to the end here. And we will have our next recipe. And then we're going to compare it to see if it actually the same as it did last week, which is always the question with these types of technologies. So far it's looking okay. Let's see if we can copy paste this. And is there an option? Yeah, there's an option to directly insert it. And now we went from having a migration only for v1.26 to also have one for v1.25. And now we're gonna compare and see that there is a slight difference here. This used to be authorization, and now it's policy. And this used to be a few more, which it suddenly forgot. But the other ones, those are exactly the same as it generated last week. So that is a pretty good, decent help to do this type of work. Because otherwise I would have had to manually go through everything, and now I'm going to have to verify the things in here.
Do a lot of tedious typing. Yeah, I think this is a good example of just in general where we see generative AI fitting into the refactoring process. Do it at the beginning to get started with the recipe writing and the recipe configuration, rather than have it make the edits itself. So if it's going to do hallucinations or mistakes right up front in the generation of the code you're then going to run, well, then you could fix it before the code actually runs, rather than having it go and make a bunch of code changes during the recipe run itself and being like, wait, what the hell is all of this? This isn't what I wanted.
And it's great if you open up a couple files that are maybe similar to what you want, and then have it. I always start with filling out the name of my recipe and the description of what I want it to be doing, and maybe write a couple first tests, and then suddenly you'll find that you get much better suggestions through these tools.
The moments where I have personally been most wowed by like Copilot or similar tools was before I knew that it was taking into account my like open editor tabs. And so it was just like a magical thing of like, how did it know that's what I wanted? Well, it just put the files I had open into its context window. So yeah, whenever you're using tools like this, great tip that Tim just gave you there, use have open lots of things that are similar to or relevant to what you're working on, because those will be silently used as inputs to the to Copilot or whatever tool you're using.
Absolutely, and it's in that sense, it's no different than how I work without these tools. You're going to also have something similar open.
It's true.
Copy paste a bit, change it a bit, and then do it in that one. So help those tools along a bit.
Help the tool to help you.
No. So then one thing that I wanted to show you, like these are the migrations, but we also have a number of best practices for Kubernetes. And these can be things like finding potential issues, something that you missed adding a liveness probe or a readiness probe or some limits on your CPU. And we have a couple of recipes to help you find those instances. And then the fun thing here is that a lot of these are using the exact same recipe underneath. So they're named specifically to find in this case, missing CPU resource, CPU requests. And it uses the find resources missing configuration, just taking in a different path to be able to do this type of work. The one that I wanted to look at in particular is this one, which is the add configuration, because I think it ties in very nicely to what Sam is going to show you. Where in this case, we have a recipe to add some Kubernetes configuration to particular resource kind at a particular path, and then we want to add a value there to say that this one is not privileged, just to make things slightly more secure. And we use that pattern a lot, also to insert complete snippets of YAML things that we want to add. In this case, a lifecycle rule to clear things out in your storage bucket. And then if you jump into this recipe itself, you will find that it's org open Kubernetes add configuration. And I have it open here. That it takes a couple of parameters, a couple of options here. So an API version, things that you wanted to match. A resource kind, another form of what you would want to be matching. And then from there, the configuration and the value that you actually want to insert. But the neat thing here, in my opinion, is the implementation, because all of this is just boilerplate, taking in some arguments, and then for the visitor itself, you will find that this is all the code there is to it. We're inserting a YAML snippet in a particular place for a Kubernetes descriptor, but all we have to do for this particular recipe is to do that matching on the resource kind and the API version. And after that, we call out to an existing recipe that is generic, the MergeYaml recipe, which comes from OpenRewrite itself. And this is a common pattern where we find a specific use case, we give it a helpful API for something that you would be able to find in search, and then more easily explain the options available to you, and then call out for the smart parts of it to the MergeYaml recipe that we have in OpenRewrite. And I think, Sam, you have something to show the folks on how that recipe in particular works.
I do.
Right?
Yeah, I think it is worth showing off MergeYaml in some detail, as it is really a Swiss Army knife, or a very versatile sort of tool for modifying configuration as code type stuff. And so I thought I would just show a little bit about how to use it, maybe a glance at its implementation, and just generally introduce people to it. So and we've had, this is like a MergeYaml to do configuration as code type changes is a popular use case for Modern across our customers, as it's an incredibly common scenario that people use configuration as code type patterns for their CI or their Kubernetes or their whatever it is across 10,000 repositories. And what typically starts off with is, these are these are all like specialized tools, and there's a few experts in them, and people who blaze the trail and create the first version of the CI configuration or the whatever it is, and then everyone else copies and pastes those and makes little changes, and it's almost like the natural evolution of an organism, where you have stuff getting added in by random, and but now every now and then an old trait causes a problem and it gets weeded out by natural selection. But generally you get chaotic mutation and proliferation, unbounded. And so then that central team who got things started is like, wait, there's what in our Kubernetes configuration now? Like our CI is doing what? And the answer to that question is, well, about 50 different things scattered across 20,000 repositories. So configuration as code is so good and useful, and I'm a big fan of things that can be configured as code should be, for the most part, as it's way better than clicking buttons in some GUI that's going to crash, right? But it's just another example of what I think we talk about all the time, of even doing the right thing and making the best possible choices, you still end up with problems. So how do you deal with those problems? Well, for configuration as code drift and mutation, recipes like MergeYaml and the Kubernetes stuff Tim has been showing help. So let's say we have a scenario like this, where it's like, okay, we got to add, so this is like a GitHub CI configuration. And this is just saying, hey, go use this CI Gradle step. And when you do, make sure it has these secrets available to you. And so if you needed to edit the name of a secret, or add a new secret to 50,000 different YAML files, doing that by hand, good night. What a huge pain in the ass, right? Definitely find a junior intern or someone to try and foist that one off if you can. They'll hate you, but you won't have to do the tedious work. So maybe that is worth it to you on the balance. Or you could use MergeYaml. And this guy takes a JSON path to identify a particular place in a YAML hierarchy to insert not just an individual value or an individual, key value pair, although you certainly can, like I'm going to do here, but even potentially like a whole complex like tree of YAML values can be inserted in this place. So, but let's start with something basic. So, right, like I want to add a new secret to all of our CI jobs. It's going to be Sam's secret, and I want to add it to this ci.yaml specifically, which I know we happen to have a file with this name in all of our repositories. But you could do something like, if you wanted to do this in every single one, you could do like a star here for a wildcard. So let's go ahead and just run that and kind of take a look at. It runs very fast. We basically immediately start getting some results back, and like boom, we see our SAM secret being inserted in an appropriate place in this file with contextually appropriate indentation. And so like boom, like that's like how many? That's what 50. Yeah, we made changes in 50 repositories in like 12 seconds. Well, we haven't actually changed anything yet, right? I haven't gone and hit the commit button. This is just a demo. I don't have a real secret that I need to add to all of these files. Our CI configuration is fine at the moment. But, play with me in this space a little bit, So that's a very basic and incredibly common example, right? Like, as Tim was pointing out, like it's very common in these configuration as code type things that there'll be like a version number for the API or something that you have to bump on the regular. And I know that Modern customers. Let's look in here and see if there are any version numbers that I needed to bump in here at the moment. But yeah, Modern customers are very much on the regular doing this sort of thing. So that's kind of a basic example of using MergeYaml. Let's look at a slightly more complex example. Like, let's say I've got like this Dependabot configuration file, and I'm like, you know what? I don't need this to run every single day. I mean, we're using Modern to update our dependencies anyway, so like we're not actually even really using Dependabot at all. But like, say I wanted to change this interval and like bump this down from daily to weekly, for example. Well, it's harder to make a JSON path, harder but not impossible to make a JSON path to like target this daily but leave this daily alone. And so if we to do this, and that's because these are two entries in a list, right? So if I just make a JSON path that goes like update schedule interval, well, that's equally applicable to this spot and to this spot. So how do I limit it to just target ones, to just change schedule intervals where package ecosystem is GitHub Actions? Well, that's what this object identifying property field is for. So to do this update, to change this interval from daily to weekly, I'm going to put in this complex YAML snippet, kind of like including, I'm going to say, hey, we're package ecosystem is GitHub Action, schedule weekly. And I'm going to say, hey, the way you differentiate which of these entries in a list are unique, like the property that we can target this with is this package ecosystem property. And so for the path, we're just saying, the root of the document into the update section. So we're not going very far with the path. We're just saying merge, go under updates and then merge into this YAML snippet into everything under updates, but use this package ecosystem property to identify which particular entry in the list we want to modify. And so if I go and run this, we should similarly, get back results where we are updating. Oh no, did I mess this up? Hold on. So this says I overwrote the package ecosystem Gradle with the package ecosystem GitHub Actions. That's not what I meant. Well, this is one of the most common things. What if I get rid of this part? I get rid of package ecosystem there. Well, but then it won't know.
You want to explicitly match that one.
Yeah, I want to explicitly match that one. I thought I had done that. What am I messing up? So this is just the name of a property.
This is one of those
Oh,
cases where I also always need like existing examples to look through, and then you'll find those.
totally. Okay, so package ecosystem. I misspell anything? Package ecosystem. I'm just going to copy and paste it. Could always have a dyslexic moment. It looks like I spelled it correctly. So package ecosystem, GitHub Actions, schedule, package ecosystem. I guess technically that I am telling it overwrite GitHub Actions, but how could I limit it? Well, I guess this might be a case where I need a. Well, no, let me go look because I was pretty sure that I saw relevant test cases like this. We go look at this MergeYaml test. Okay, so yeah, this one uses name. This is doing a JDK version upgrade, and this is looking at the name property. But I suppose this test doesn't actually prevent it from updating others if there were multiple. So this one also uses name. Okay, so this is the kind of thing I'm trying to do. This is saying, merge into this one a DB02. Maybe I'll try this. Okay. So to do something similar to this in this context, and I feel like it's good that I'm showing this because when I have people come to me with questions about MergeYaml of like, hey, MergeYaml isn't working the way I want it to, it's almost always something about object identifying property. So it's only appropriate that I struggle with that a little bit. Okay, so if instead of saying $, oh wait, this is the one I want to look at. So instead of saying $updates, I'll put the updates in here, and we'll say, okay, so from the root, and then object identifying property package ecosystem. I think based on that test case, I think this will give us the result we're looking for. Let's take a look and see if I did that right. No, it's still overwriting the other one.
Yeah.
What am I messing up here?
Of course, I think there is an alternative option where you can update the path expression, the way you're going to select, and then navigate in that with the //
Yeah, that is an excellent point. So we support a variety of JSON path expression notations, and I believe there is one where you can do this kind of thing, where I could say navigate into an element which has a sub element with a particular value. So let's see if we can make this work here, and that might be better. Okay, so we want to navigate into .updates, and we want to navigate into updates where .package ecosystem is equal to GitHub Actions. And then I guess we want to say, we could do something like this, schedule, and then I could just say weekly down here. And in this context, I don't even know if the package ecosystem object identifying property is necessary. Let's see. Does this look like I did this right to you, Tim? Let's see.
First glance, yeah.
First glance, all right. Well, let's see if the first glance is the best glance. Hey, there we go. That worked. So that was a way to target it. So I guess, yeah, the message here is be aware of some of the more advanced features of JSON path matchers if you want to match on a specific place in a collection or that has a specific value. And if you try a couple times, you'll be able to get to something that works, even if the first try maybe doesn't go the way you planned it to. But that's fine. That's the nice thing about using like the modern platform or like the modern CLI, where all of the LSTs are pre-built. You can run the recipe really fast because you don't have to rebuild the LST in memory every time the way you do with the open source build plugins. So it is I find very handy to have an interface like this for iterating on recipe development and indeed recipe running. As if you don't get the parameters right on the first try, it might be nice to be able to do a couple little trips through and how it works. Okay,
And of
so that
course,
yeah,
if you only
go ahead.
have unit tests, then you likely would have only tested with one block of
Right.
that, like one sequence element. Whereas, yeah, of course, this having a platform that shows you how it works in practice is really helpful to improve your recipes in this way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I figured we could kind of so that's kind of everything about the usage of MergeYAML. Well, I don't know about everything, but that should give you an idea of its of MergeYAML's capability and usage. And if you have some configuration as code in a YAML format, you're probably already thinking of some kinds of things where that would be helpful. So I thought for the recipe authors in the audience that we might look at how this guy actually works because it's a bit complicated, and some of this complexity could probably be cleaned up and refactored a little bit. Wherever there's complexity, there's surely some bugs hiding in there. But the gist of how this works, or most of it, is in this merge YAML visitor, which has some excuse me which has some interesting properties and how it works. So it's like any other YAML visitor. It's going to extend YAML visitor, and it is going to override each of the visit methods, and then it is going to it's got some snippet it's trying to merge in, which initially has already actually been by the time it makes it into MergeYAML Visitor, like the MergeYAML recipe, will have used the YAML parser, and I guess I skipped over this a little bit, but we'll have used the YAML parser to turn the snippet into a YAML LST. So that's what we do here, where the YAML text snippet being passed in is put into the YAML parser and then parsed into a little YAML document. So now we have two YAML documents, the one for the LST being visited and one for the snippet being merged in. And so merge YAML calls this variable scope refers to the YAML document that was parsed from your repository, and the incoming was parsed from the snippet. And oh, my headset is running out of batteries. So 1 second while I put in a new battery.
Yeah, sure. So it's really nice to get this deep insight into the merge YAML recipe and the merge YAML visitor because
Oh,
I am
I'm there.
right now right now I am I have a pull request open that extends merge YAML with making sure that if the element that you're inserting is the NZ at the end, that the comment that was there on that last element is actually retained on the last element. So I'm really glad to get this deep dive as I am struggling to get that pull request reviewed. So it's
Ah,
much
is
appreciated.
should we review this pull request live? Is this a draft, or you still have stuff to figure out, or is it ready to merge?
I think it's ready to review, but I'm not sure if it's something that would fit within the block of time that we
The live stream
usually.
format. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Because if you do want to do a live on-air code review, we could do that. Could merge it. So anyway, so for each of the YAML element types, you've got the current one, the scope, and the incoming snippet. And so it's going to go through and kind of like pairwise compare and merge, and has a couple different things. Like, okay, when you're visiting a scalar, it's like the only thing that you could really be merging into a scalar is another scalar, at least in pretty much. And so in those cases, it's like, okay, you got two scalars. Well, we're going to call this merge scalar function to merge them together. And there's a couple helper methods on here for merging two sequences, merging two mappings, these kinds of things. So basically, it is like traversing through the tree, merging like elements as it goes, and you'll see this trick done a couple times in this recipe where it will, like, in order to recursively apply to multiple subtrees, it will new up a new copy of itself and specifically go visit some sub element here. Like there's a strange behavior that it has that we actually see being implemented here, where if you do have a sequence of items and there is no object identifying property, and we're merging a YAML snippet in, this recipe will interpret you as wanting to merge the YAML snippet into every individual entry in the sequence, which is sometimes what you want. And well, when it isn't what you want, use object identifying property. But that is a maybe slightly surprising behavior of the recipe that can be useful when you know it's there and when it's what you want, and at other times might be a bit surprising. Like, whoa, wait, where I only wanted to merge in this snippet in one place. Why is it showing up in every entry in the collection? And if you find yourself having that thought, remember, object identifying property is the answer there. So yeah, it basically goes through each of the sequences, scalars, mappings, and zippers together what's already there with what's coming in, and each of the merge methods has some logic in order to implement those things. A lot of collections manipulation, which you will see, uses the list utils functions, which I cannot emphasize enough are the appropriate way to do manipulations of collections of LST elements, not just within MergeYaml, but across all of Open Rewrite. As a reminder of one of Open Rewrite's kind of like core design principles or considerations is that LST elements are immutable. Nothing enforces the immutability on collections, which is unfortunate, but so it's just, if you find yourself mutating a collection of LST elements directly, you're making a mistake. Don't do that, because we use referential equality to detect if something has changed. And I was started off and I was counting a list of things to go through, but then as I've gotten sidetracked, I'm like, I don't know what I'm counting anymore, so let's put my hand down. But it will, right, since we use referential equality to detect if something has changed, like if you visit a collection of LST elements and you create a new array and you copy all the elements into that new array and you return it, that'll look like a change. Even though the collection has all the same elements as before, that looks like a change. And so that's a place where you're going to get errors in your tests, or in the results. You might get results like, recipe reported making a change but made no change, sort of errors. So it's not really the entirely the point of what we're talking about, but I do just want to highlight again, because it is such a common mistake that people make, is doing collections manipulations in ways that thwart the good intentions of Open Rewrite when it comes to efficiently detecting and applying changes. And this is just an example of how you do list manipulation right. Because you were to look under the hood on these list utils methods, you would see that they the kind of thing that they do, that if you just use the Java Streams APIs, for example, they will not if you apply a sequence of manipulations to a collection that don't result in the elements changing, it'll return the exact same instance that was passed in. So it tries to avoid unnecessary allocation and really tries to maintain that principle of maintaining referential equality. So maybe a slight digression from the specific subject of configuration as code, but I feel like this one's always worth emphasizing when I have an audience of recipe authors or would-be recipe authors to talk to, as it's one of the most common things that I will fix in a code review.
And
anyway,
helpfully,
yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Helpfully, in the last week, we were onboarding a new colleague, Jacob, and he, of course, got feedback in his code reviews, like, you should be using the list utils, you should not be doing that exact anti-pattern that you described. And then he figured, well, then we should also be documenting those methods very thoroughly as well. So if you hover over any of them right now, you'll get a better description of what we're doing and why we're doing it that way. And so that it wasn't there before, but now onboarding a colleague, you find that, yeah, maybe it does make sense to add some background into what exactly we should be doing.
Yeah, so thanks everyone who has contributed to the Java docs on these. As sorry it weren't always there, but open source development is a collaborative effort. So if you see a Java doc missing, feel free to add it or send me a message on our open source community Slack asking what it should be, and we can get that in there. Anyway, I think that's all I had to kind of demo or to describe about MergeYaml. Anything else, Tim, or is that a good place to end it, you think?
No, I think what's maybe good to know that this is underlying a lot of the recipes that we have. So whether that is GitHub Actions, GitLab CI, Kubernetes, it's there's I think a couple dozen more that are all just using the same mechanism to be able to do things. And sometimes we put a nice label on it, but you can also always get access to the raw recipe itself if you have similar use cases that aren't already covered. So
yeah, absolutely. So whenever we get around to, you've heard about Apple's new configuration language, Tim?
Yeah, I hear it's good, but I haven't dove in yet.
I took a glance and I thought the syntax looked nice, but even as I read it, it's just like another like parser to write, another MergeYaml to write, etc., etc. But that's life in the software development space. Always reinventing the wheel slightly better, or at least slightly different.
Such that whenever you think you're caught up, and right now we're working on a TOML parser, so to have that for Gradle, of course, and then but the moment we'll have folks ask about that Apple format next.
Oh, for sure, sure.
Always fun.
Yeah, so let us know if you're an early adopter of that Apple data format. Let me know how you like it. I'm curious. Not the syntax look nice, but it's almost like I would rather. It's like, was it even worth ditching XML? Like, did we really need JSON and YAML and all of these others? Like, XML's fine, right?
Yeah. You have XSLT if you don't quite like how it is right now, and it's maybe even more powerful than MergeYaml, but switch it whatever you need for the job.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. Well, hopefully this is helpful to everyone, and the next time you have a configuration as code sort of change and you need to propagate to 1,000 repositories, remember MergeYaml's there to help.
Yep. And so with that, we can wrap up for this week. Now, we're going to not have an edition next week because some folks in the US think that this will be a good time to see family and then have some turkey or some other dinner.
Something like that.
So we're gonna be out for 1 week, and then we will be back with, I believe, a live coding session.
Yeah, that should be fun. I think we're going to live code on a recipe that for removing unused dependencies that I had started and mentioned on a previous Code Remix Weekly and intended to finish offline, and then never finished offline since then, and then found that like my procrastination about finishing this recipe and my procrastination about coming up with good topics for Code Remix Weekly streams could solve each other. I love it when not doing something, when not addressing a problem solves that problem later. It's like my favorite thing.
Yeah, you do need a problem that is fixable within an hour, but other than So yeah, look forward to that, and then hope you all enjoy it next week, and then see you in 2 weeks. So.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.